a lifestyle is something that is lifelong. So you're always going to be becoming this person. So it's never going to be a point, once you make that connection, it's never going to be a point of, oh, I'm not going to do this for 2 months, or oh, I'm just going to stop. Oh, no, this is our lifestyle now.
Well, Jamecia, it is so great to finally, after a long while, have you on the Dream Lifestyle podcast.
Thank you. I am blessed to be here. Thank you for inviting
Awesome.
me.
Well, listen, it's great to have you. So, one of the things that we do here is we always ask our guests just this one simple question just to kind of kick off the conversation. And that is, when did you start building your dream lifestyle?
That's a good question. What comes to my mind first? I feel like I've always been building my dream lifestyle, but I feel like it wasn't until I incorporated God that it actually became like a thing that I knew I was confident in it to achieve it. But maybe in high school, just being intentional about like, okay, this is the plan that I want to follow. I want to go to college. I want to be better. I want to do different things. So maybe around that time and just being intentional going forward from there.
That's good. So you mentioned that on the latter part of your answer, just like that intentional part, right? That intentional. And so our conversation topic today has to do with really reinventing yourself, right? And obviously being intentional is a part of that. And so I want to talk about just kind of some of the shifts that
Yes.
have to happen for a person to reinvent themselves. So talk with me a little bit about just, obviously with your story and everything like that. What's your experience, I should say, with these shifts in order for someone to reinvent themselves as you've been intentional?
Yeah. So I think it starts with just recognizing what's going on around you. So recognizing the different patterns, recognizing like you versus them per se, like what makes you unique, what makes you yourself, and starting from there. So being able to point yourself out and be like, hey, this is who I am. This is where I want to go. And recognizing the different patterns around you and seeing like, oh, is that leading me to where I'm trying to go? So it all comes down to like who you are as a person and your identity, I think, is at the core of that.
So if I'm understanding you properly, you're saying there's an identity shift that has to happen based on somebody's position where they want to go. So if someone wants to go to college, okay, here's what college students here's what the identity of a college student. If someone wants to be an entrepreneur, here's an identity of. So we're kind of talking about an identity shift. Am I hearing that right?
Yep, identity shift and aligning yourself with the things that are going to put you on that path.
Okay. So talk with me just in your own journey, like what have been some major identity shifts that you've made? So you mentioned earlier about, how you've been intentional with, just building your dream lifestyle. Like what are just some
Yeah.
identity shifts that you've made?
So as far as school, being intentional with that. So with the courses that I took, the programs that I was in. So I went to a college prep program during the summer months and in the fall that prepared me for that. And just being around people who actually went to college and learning different things in that nature, how to do FAFSA and that stuff like that. As far as like business, so surrounding myself with people who do business, getting the mindset of what does a business owner do? How does a business owner operate in their personal lives, their business life, and just learning those simple things and just the mindset piece, I think is the part that's going to transform the person the most.
That's
Identity.
good. That's awesome. So one of the things that I've heard you talk about previously is the distinction between someone just leveling up and someone truly transforming. Can you touch on that for a little bit?
Yeah. So truly transforming to me is a inner transformation. So this has to do, I feel like, with your whole inner being. So when I think of inner being, I think of like your soul, your mind, will, and emotion. So are you really responding to things? Are you able to do it within your willpower and with God's power at the same time? And then how strong is your mind? Is your mind rooted in the word? Is your mind rooted in the world? What things break you down, what things build you up, and just understanding that if I am transforming from a inner virgin, then nothing can break me down. So if I'm transform it outwards. So looking at things externally and trying to transform that way, it will never work. And leveling up, that's just going to a new height every single time. I think it's always going to be a new level. And I think that's something that we should always look forward to as well. But I think it goes hand in hand, transformation and leveling
Yeah.
up at the same
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely. And I would definitely agree with you. There is a relationship between the two, right? So it's not just, I'm just always leveling up or I'm just always, transforming internally. There's a relationship. And I think you hit the nail on the head by really demonstrating that the internal transformation happens first and the fruit of that internal transformation is the level up.
Yep.
Whereas I think today, a lot of people are kind of just going after the level up but not actually trying to transform
Yes.
internally.
And
So
it's not sustainable
yeah,
if you go after the level up. So
yes, 1,000%. So I want to get a little granular. I want to get really practical, just surrounding that idea of like identity shifts that we talked about earlier, and just really like how someone can apply that to their own lives. So can you just tell me, what does it look like for someone to actually shift in their identity? Like what does that actually look like? Now, you mentioned earlier like behaviors and attitudes and stuff like that, but like, can you just be a little more specific? Like, what does that mean?
yeah. So I think it's becoming confident in the person that you are becoming. So knowing that I am this person and this person is me. Once I finally like can recognize that, then it's okay, what habits and behaviors am I doing? How do these things actually align with the person that I'm becoming? If they don't, then I need to go ahead and cut that out. If they do, then let me continue this. Let me build upon this. And I think it comes to a point in like, even in your mind, just becoming aware, recognizing like those different thoughts. Oh, this was my old self. But the new Jamecia, she thinks like this. She behaves like this. She interacts with other people like this. And breaking out of those old patterns and those old cycles that keep us stuck and keep us stagnant, and trying to unlock the new ways that our new self is going to be. Yeah.
No, that's really good. I like that. You hit on a lot of things that I want to kind of go back to. So you mentioned how like people need to become more thought aware. They need to, and I love that point, because so often people just kind of allow their minds to just roam free, right? They're just kind of like free thinking is honestly like damaging more than it's actually being helpful. So like when someone is in that space, right, where they're just kind of letting their minds run free, can you just kind of elaborate more as to why that is so important, that people are becoming more aware of their thoughts?
Yes. Yes. All thoughts are not your thoughts. That's the first thing I want to say. I want to make sure that everybody knows all thoughts are not your thoughts. Some thoughts are past thoughts of events that may have transpired, and then you keep ruminating on those things, and you think that, oh, because this person did this, this sets you back to a different situation. So having that awareness around, okay, I'm having this thought, but am I present in this moment? Am I really aware of what's happening in this moment, and recognizing that this was my past self, maybe speaking, or is this my current self, or am I thinking future oriented? But I think all it comes down to examining your thoughts and disciplining your thoughts as well. So when I say examine, I mean just question them. Where did this come from? Like, I think it's good to even ask yourself, why am I thinking like this? Is this true? Is this true about who I am and who I am becoming? And just always putting that together, the identity and the thought. Does this thought match up with this identity? And if it doesn't, it's not true. So I think at the cuffs of it, having like those values too. So knowing who you are and it goes back to that confident piece, being confident in that. And I said examining, and then also disciplining your thoughts. So that discipline piece is hard, but we all have to do it. And when I say discipline, I mean regularly practicing like some type of mindfulness. So some type of awareness around what you're thinking and how it's making you feel. And if you are constantly feeling depressed, what thoughts are you having? What things are you watching? What things are you listening to? What people are you around? What are you basically feeding yourself that's causing you to think like this? So it's a lot, but examining them and just disciplining it is
Yeah.
it's going to change your life.
And I think I love that because all of that precedes when you act. And that's where you touched on earlier with the habits and behaviors,
Yep.
where again, that identity shift is seen in the habits and behaviors. But if someone can examine and discipline their thoughts, like you're talking about, that's where they will find themselves. I don't want to say making the process easier to shift their identity, but they've
Yeah.
just become more aware so they can actually make a better decision,
Yep.
right? Because I think so often people, specifically dreamers, right, where we have this goal and this, okay, this is who I want to become. This is what I want to be able to do as a result of this new identity. But it seems so far, and it seems so far to the point where it's like, oh my God, this is like hopeless, or oh my God, this is like so much work. But I love that thought process where it's like, no, become thought aware so that
Yep.
way then you can examine and I would say line up those behaviors and habits with, does that align with the successful version of you?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
basically, making the mature decision of, okay, that's something I need to keep doing, or that's something I need to let go of.
Let go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And so you mentioned earlier, because in the name of like habits and behaviors, you said this like way early in the beginning, concerning patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, concerning patterns and patterns, I love talking about patterns because I feel like, when you really start to see patterns, how can someone really start to identify patterns? Like, so you kind of answered a little bit earlier, but for someone who is stuck in a pattern but they don't know, how can they identify, okay, I'm in a pattern that is hurting me. I'm in a pattern that's keeping me in neutral. How can they do that?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be a warning sign around you, but it is that awareness piece. So whether your body is giving you warning signals or whether it's people around you or the systems that you are in, it's always going to be a warning sign that, hey, maybe this is not good for me, or maybe this is not working in the way that I want it to work, or it's depleting me. So if I am eating bad and I know I'm gaining weight, I know I'm not going to like that overall. At job, I'm not doing my work. I'm getting written up. Okay, this is not sustainable. In the system that I'm in, maybe I'm not paying my bills, so now I'm getting eviction notice. Like it's different stuff like that. That you just got to be more in tune and recognize, like, hey, um, you know, this isn't it. And also being real with yourself too. I think people sometimes don't want to be real with themselves or don't want to stop the pattern because it's comfortable. And I think we have to get to a place where we become uncomfortable. And once we do that, then I think it's like a urgency for us to like, oh, I got to stop this. This is not it. So
Yeah.
that uncomfortability, I think, pushes us to a place of changing those habits, in which I want to get into neuroplasticity.
Ooh,
And
get into it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Because I was going to go there.
so I have a background in mental health, and one of the things that we learn about is neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change. And when I say the brain's ability to change, I mean that you have the ability to change your behavior. So this happens basically when we can go back to thought awareness. So the thoughts that we have, obviously, they're in the brain. The more that we think on the thought, so I'm going to say I'm not good enough. A lot of people have this thought underlyingly, and they might not know. But the more that you are using this thought, the stronger the brain associates with this thought, and it's easier to go that way. So it's a lot less harder to say, I am good enough. I am worthy. I am valuable. That feels uncomfortable for us. Going back to that uncomfortable piece. So it's more comfortable to be like, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I'm enough. But when we recognize that this habit is not producing the fruit that we talked about earlier to get us to shifting our identity into the future self of becoming who we need to be. Once we get to that point, then we start to use this other neural pathway of I am valuable. I am enough. And it's possible over time. It's not a quick fix, but it is possible with that thought awareness, with examining your thoughts and also disciplining them, making sure that you are checking it when it first comes and stopping it right there and changing.
That's so good. And what I love about just that whole idea of neuroplasticity is the fact that even it aligns with what you said, just surrounding disciplining it. Like one of the things I tell people all the time who are in a space where they just need more self-confidence, particularly when it comes to their affirmations, I tell them to say it anyway. And the reality is you're not going to believe it when you first start saying it. And that's to what you were saying, like, because you've rehearsed this, I'm not enough, or I always fail, or I'm not good. Like, because you've rehearsed this for so many times, when you first start actually being kind to yourself and you actually start empowering yourself and encouraging yourself, you aren't going to believe it.
Nope.
But you're disciplining yourself to say, no, I will put this because I want to reroute my brain. I want to regroove my brain because I know that this is truth, that I am worthy, that I am able, that I'm more than able, that I am capable, I'm loved, I'm all these things where you are literally rewiring your brain out of discipline, not
Yep.
because it feels good.
Yep.
And I think that just kind of drives home the point that you were talking about, where it's like, no, I need to examine the thoughts and I discipline them, which takes work.
It takes work. It takes work. And it's just like every other thing that we try to learn. So I'm not sure why we're not connecting the pieces of, okay, my mind can actually do this too. The same things or the same skills that we choose to learn in our jobs at school with the education material, working out like that overtime, building that muscle, building that skill and that talent. Like it's the same process with the mind. And it's a muscle to work, but it's worth it. And it's going to produce that inner transformation so that you can get to your next level.
I love it. No, and you were 1,000% correct. So to kind of like not so much transition us, but kind of take us to the next step of this process of reinventing ourselves. We talked about the identity shift, and we covered, how it has to do with examining our habits and examining our behaviors, which, we talked about how the key to that is becoming aware of our thoughts by examining and disciplining our thoughts, right? So I want to talk with the kind of the second half of this equation where we actually go from, okay, this is like an internal process, because everything we just talked about had to do with just what's in somebody's head, right? So if I'm not really going to be able to know if someone's in this process of reinventing themselves until I actually see them do different things or see them go different places or talk a different way and things like that. Can you talk with me about just this process now of seeing it through?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think for a lot of people, they will be able to become thought aware and they will see habits and all these different things, but they don't really see it through. Can you just break that down, elaborate on that concept?
Yeah. Seeing it through requires that you have a vision in mind. So I think if you are able to piece together, what vision do I have for myself? Where am I going? What is the bigger picture? Then I can start putting the pieces together. Okay, I need to do this. Okay, I need to go there. Okay, I need to connect with this person. Once I have that vision, I need to write it down. I need to be looking at it. I need to be marking off time frames and when I'm going to get it done. I need to be connecting to people that are doing the same thing and also people that are going to hold me accountable. And I think the biggest piece is holding yourself accountable to see it through. Because at the end of the day, this is a you versus you thing. This is you reinventing yourself. This is you going to the next level. This is you transforming. So what are you going to do to make sure and ensure that you're going to get there, that you're going to become a better person? So It is the self-accountability piece that is the biggest thing, but also having the community around you and also writing down that plan and also having that vision and holding on to it and making sure that, I know that I'm going to have these challenges of this thought may come. I might get discouraged, but I have to hold on to the truth that I am worthy, that I will succeed, that I will prosper, that, these things are coming to me and everything is going to be good. Like you have to know deep down and be confident in it.
Wow. No, you said so much that I love, just because I love that. Number one, it does start with vision, but a lot of times when people get into, okay, here's what we need to do now, right? I have the vision. I know what I want to do. I know who I need to become. I've made the identity shifts and now it's time to execute. A lot of times, particularly with that word accountability, a lot of times when we think of that word accountability, our first thought is, okay, let me get a coach, let me get a collaborator, let me get people around you, which absolutely that has their value. But I love how you really emphasized, and I think that it's the heart of just this podcast and everything I'm about, where it's like you have to hold yourself accountable. Like to some degree, you have to basically have your own skin in the game for how you hold yourself accountable. And I think that that's where a lot of people miss it. Like, I think that's where a lot of people have a missed opportunity just because, they have the people around them. They have the pastor, they have the therapist, they have a whole team full of people.
Yeah.
But because they don't hold themselves accountable, they're not actually able to see the full fruit of their labor. They're not actually able to see the full fruit of the identity shifts that they've made. And I think that's really important. So with the concept of holding self accountable, can you just go deeper on that? Just like, what does it look like for someone to hold themselves accountable? Because I think everyone listening knows what, having someone else hold you accountable looks like, right? Where they're having the hard conversation. They're saying, hey, you said you were going to do it. But like, what does it mean? What does it sound like? What does it look like for someone to hold themselves accountable?
Holding yourself accountable requires that you just be real with yourself. So you stop procrastinating. You stop making excuses. And I think too, it gets to a point where you have to get to a point where, okay, enough is enough. I'm tired. This is what I'm going to do. This is not what I'm going to do. It's you walking it out day by day. You might not meet the mark every single time, but you are making strides and you are making the effort to get there slowly but surely, but you are making an effort and you're not making no excuses for yourself. You're not trying to intentionally revert back to those old thoughts, to those old behaviors, to that old self, but you're pushing and you're walking to the new person, to the new identity that you are becoming.
I love that. I want to go deeper. You said a word, standards. You said a word, standard, and I want to go deeper with that just because I do think practically, in order for someone to hold themselves accountable, they need to just set in place standards. Now, obviously, they can do this in a collaborative effort to figure out, okay, what are good standards to have? But just in general, I do agree with you that in order for someone to hold themselves accountable, that they need to have standards that they have just literally personal to themselves. They might not even need to tell anybody, whatever. How should someone go about setting these standards as well as keeping themselves to it?
That's good. The first word that comes to my mind is boundaries. I know we talk a lot about setting boundaries with other people, but sometimes we didn't set boundaries for ourselves to protect who we are becoming. I don't think a lot of people really truly value themselves at the end of the day. So it's hard for people to let me think about me. I think, well, especially for me, because I'm a helper. I love to help people. So I'm always thinking about how can I help this person rather than like what's going to be good for me at the end of the day. So setting boundaries with yourself to make sure that you are becoming the best version of yourself first. Yeah. And then whatever is left, you can give to others.
Yeah, I agree. I always I love the analogy of just like, on a plane when they say, hey, in the event of an emergency, put on a mask for yourself, then help somebody else. Yeah. And I think particularly for those of us who love people, because I'm like you, like I love helping people to the best of my abilities. But if you pour out so much without taking care of yourself, you end up burnt out, you end up frustrated, you end up basically in a more vulnerable position to violate those standards and violating those boundaries just because you're not in a healthy spot anymore. And I think that if someone stays, or I should say, if someone lives their life without those types of personal boundaries, they will find themselves just kind of like sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's why I love the point where you said just overall where we're on now of seeing it through, because it's like you have to be able to recognize that pattern, be able to recognize, hey, I'm tired of seeing this in my life. Yeah. And saying, hey, something has to change. Not even something has changed. Something is going to change.
Yes.
Because enough is enough.
That's good that you said that. I think too, the verbiage, the change in how you just said that something has to, is something is going to. So being more proactive about what you're doing, being more proactive about changing your behavior, and being more proactive about protecting yourself and the future self. So I think those boundaries, they come into place when you are thinking about who you are becoming. The boundaries that that person needs to have is what you need to put in place right now.
Yeah.
You don't, uh,
Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I was about to say, you don't need to wait
Mm,
to
you
do
don't need to
that.
wait. Yes, 1,000%. No, and you shouldn't. Like, you
Mhm.
genuinely shouldn't, because this journey to reinventing yourself, this journey to your goals, is a very personal one. And like, I firmly believe, like, I don't want to live my life or have my life be over and I go up to God and God shows me all that could have been. Like, just no. That just sounds miserable,
Yeah.
right? Um one of the things that you said earlier that I kind of want to circle back to and go deeper on is just this idea of, you know, when we're not going to be perfect as we walk it out. I believe you language it something like that, where like, yes, okay, I'm holding myself accountable, but I'm also giving myself enough grace to know, like, all right, I'm not going to be perfect every day. But one of the things that I've noticed is that people use this phrase of give myself grace, and they've kind of turned into enabling. Can you talk with me just about how does someone keep a healthy, I don't like to use the word balance, but like, how does someone manage the tension between actually giving myself grace and no, I need to actually hold myself accountable to this? Like, how can someone manage that tension?
So giving yourself grace is knowing that you're putting in the work and that you might be tired, you
Hmm.
might be exhausted, but you're not going to take a 2 week break. You're not going to put in the work for a month long. Giving yourself grace is like, okay, I'm going to rest today. I've done a good job for the past couple months, for the past couple weeks. I've held myself accountable. I've worked hard on, making sure that I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm working towards these deadlines, and I'm going to give myself grace here.
That's
And
good.
with that, like I think I said, you're not going to make the mark every single time.
Yes, that's exactly what you said.
But when it gets to a point where it's beyond grace and you just enabling yourself, that is when you're reverting back. And you have to be very, very sensitive and to know what has caused me to revert back to my old ways, to my old patterns, what has come or entered into my space that has kind of triggered these behaviors or triggered me to even think like that, to behave like that, to talk like that, to pick up that habit again. And that needs to be removed. So that is like a breach of boundaries, a breach of standards. So recognizing when that has happened, and being able to, okay, stop that at the head.
Yes. Oh man, that's so good. Because like, I feel like a lot of people today are like plagued with that issue, where it's like, they'll do whatever they need to do based on the identity that they need to become. They'll do it like one time, and then like they won't do it the next day, and they're like, oh, like I'll give myself grace because it's hard. It's just like, that's
No.
not the scenario where you should be saying give yourself grace. Like, that's a scenario to hold yourself accountable and figure out, to what your point of, like, no, what stopped me from not doing what I was supposed to do? Like,
Yep.
and there should be, when we throw around these words like grace and all these things, like, at least grace for ourselves, like, there needs to be a body of work that's behind it
Yes.
first, that properly just
Justified.
like properly justifies, like, okay, like, like, I've been hitting it hard for the past 2-3 weeks, I've been really grinding it out, like, I'm tired, whatever it is, like, I can give myself grace if I, don't eat all the salads today. I can give myself grace if I don't go to the gym. I give myself grace if I don't, post as much content as I said I would this week, because I've been posting content the way I should be for the past year. Like, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like, again, like, people just use these phrases as like enabling. Like, it's literally just, you're enabling yourself to stay where you are. And that's what I believe leads people into delusion, where they feel like they are doing more in their lives than they actually are. But truthfully, they'll go out in public, go out on social media, and they're, like, man, life is good and motivated and all these things presenting one way. But behind closed doors, they're like, man, like I feel like, it should be better, or I'm not as set as I should be, just because it's like, no, there's a breach of standard because you're giving yourself all this grace. And
Yep.
it's just like, what in the world? Like, what do you expect people to do with that?
Yeah. And I want to go back to the first question that you asked me about the
Mhm.
dream lifestyle. A lifestyle is something that is lifelong. So you're always going to be becoming this person. So it's never going to be a point, once you make that connection, it's never going to be a point of, oh, I'm not going to do this for 2 months, or oh, I'm just going to stop. Oh, no, this is your lifestyle now. This is how you got here, and this is how you're going to continue to stay here, but also go to the next level, to also keep transforming, to also just become who you're supposed to be becoming. So recognizing the difference between that, like I'm not just here for a good time,
Right.
but I want to make sure that I sustain myself, that this is going to be my lifestyle, that I'm going to live like this every single day to the best of
Wow.
my ability.
That's such a effective framing when we think about these identity shifts and really seeing it through and all these things, right? Whatever action steps come from the identity shift, like really saying like, no, this is now my new normal. This is now, just the way I do things. Not just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing it for the next month. Where it's like, no, no, no. Like this is now how I do things. Like I now go to bed at 9 p.m. Like I now wake up before 7. Like that's just what I do. Right.
Yep.
And just like flat out, no negotiation. Like that's just what it is. And again, I think that framing of it, number one, helps us really know what we're call it accepting to ourselves, right? But it also really helps manage our emotions in it. So that way, when we are, month 1, month 2 in it, we're kind of just like, no, like this is a lifetime thing. So this is not, I think it helps navigate that tension that we talked about of giving yourself grace and when you should actually hold yourself accountable. I
Yeah,
think it does.
absolutely.
Um,
And also recognizing that your emotions gonna tell you so many things, but they're temporary. I
yes.
think
Oh my goodness.
holding on to that vision, that's going to be the key thing that's going to make it through. And holding on to the truths of who you're becoming.
Oh, that's so good. Can you tell us just your experience? Like, what was one of the hardest identity shifts that really encompasses everything that we talked about? So you gave us the framework from making the identity shift, from becoming thought aware and examining thoughts, disciplining thoughts, and looking at our behaviors and our habits, to now seeing it through where we're holding ourselves accountable, not giving ourselves grace when we actually just should hold ourselves accountable in that way. Can you share with us just like your personal experience of like just what was the hardest thing or hardest identity shift or hardest reinvention of yourself that you've had to make?
Yeah, I think ending up relationships. So recognizing that this relationship isn't healthy for me anymore. This relationship isn't going to produce the healthiest for Jamecia, as she wants to be a good mom, a good daughter, a good friend, a good worker in general, a good child of God. Like this relationship isn't producing what I needed to produce and what I see for myself. So I got to the point where the vision that I had for myself started to become blurry.
Wow.
My mood, my emotions, my will started to be depleted. And I recognized that, like, whoa, this is not Jamecia. This is not who I want to become. This is not who I want my daughter to see me become. That was a big, big, big identity shift for me. So that awareness around this isn't me. This isn't me. This is not the life that God has ordained for me, that He is predestined for me, and me wanting more and me being willing to go after what is more and separate myself from the things that keep me from more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And if you could go back, knowing all that you know now, and you can go back and tell yourself one thing just surrounding this process of becoming, reinventing yourself, like what would you encourage yourself with? What would you say to yourself?
Don't doubt yourself.
Mm, why that? Why that?
I think we oftentimes doubt ourselves, if we're even able to do it, if it's even able to happen, to accomplish it. Are we going to make it that far? And I think that comes from just the external world and the different systems that we have. It's a lot of fear. It's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of um, disempowerment going on. So a lot of people don't feel powerful themselves to even go after their dreams, to go after the vision that they have for themselves. Um, but that doubt keeps you double-minded. That doubt keeps you stuck. It keeps you in a cycle of, oh, I'm going to try, but no, 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 no. Oh, I'm going to try, but no, 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 no. You don't want to be on that emotional roller coaster. You
Wow.
don't want to be stuck on what if. And like you said earlier, I don't want to get to heaven and I don't want God to show me everything that I could have done and I didn't get to do it. I don't want to have any regrets. And doubt leaves you with regrets. But you overcoming that doubt, being confident and trusting that it's going to happen, that's going to lead you into the transformation. That's going to get you to where you need to go. So don't doubt yourself.
That's incredible. No, thank you so much for just really all your insights from that to just the beginning of this conversation. Because I know that for those of us in the audience that are listening, that they will really find this effective. Because before we think about what we can do, before we think about what we can have, there has to be a process of becoming. There has to be a level up, a true transformation that
Yeah.
needs to occur. And so for the person that's out there listening right now to us, what would you instruct them to be like one thing to do? Like what is like an action step based on everything that we talked about today? What's like a very practical action step that they could take like tonight based on everything that we said?
A practical step would be to get a pen, to get a journal, and to write down the vision. Where do you see yourself? It doesn't have to be a timeline, but overall for yourself. How do you think? How do you feel? Where do you live? Who are you around? How do you act? Writing down all of these things to get clear on what you want, not what everybody else tells you, not what the world tells you, not what doubt tells you, but what you truly want, what you truly know you deserve. Writing those things down.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And I know somebody needs to do that right now. Like take the time, go ahead, get your pen, get your journal and write that vision out. That's so good, Jamecia. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Now, for those who, want to go to the next step with you, they want to take next steps, they want to connect with you. How can they do that? Where can they find you? Just how can people get with you?
Yes, you can check out my website, www.jameicia.thomas.com. Connect with me there on Instagram at Jameicia Thomas, Facebook at Jameicia Thomas. Everything is my name, LinkedIn, all of that good stuff.
I love it. Now you also have, I know, some like free resources and things like that for people who want to take this topic of reinventing yourself and kind of take it to another level or really just apply it to their own lives. That really helps them. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I actually have a free resource and it goes just on what we just talked about. So, doubt. I have a 3-step guide to confident living for the self-doubting woman. Of course, it is directly to women, but men, feel free to check it out because I think it's applicable still. But it's a 3-step guide. It gives you a brief letter from me, a blurb, and just 3 simple steps, 3 things that you can do.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, Jamecia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you just for the wisdom that you've given us just concerning reinventing ourselves and in terms of really allowing us, equipping us with the tools so we can truly transform. I really do appreciate you. Listen, if you are new to this platform, if this is your first time here on the Dream Lifestyle Podcast, I would encourage you to subscribe, whether you're listening on a podcast platform or watching us on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button because it allows this informational, this impactful content to go out to more individuals like yourself. So take the time to go ahead and subscribe so you can stay up to date. I will make sure I put all of Jamecia's information in the description notes down below so that way you can connect with her, so that way you can truly walk in your transformation. And listen, we're here for one reason only, because we want to get better as dreamers. And so with that being said, I hope that you guys take one thing. She told you guys what to do. Get the pen, get the journal, and make something shake with it. But I want you to really not just hear this information, but I really want you to apply the information. So take one thing from this episode, and I'm going to ask you to do one thing with it. All right. I'm going to ask you to do one thing with this episode. Aside from subscribing, I'm going to ask you to share it with someone that you know, love, and you care about. Okay. Because they have a dream too, and they need to hear about this. Okay. So I appreciate you guys. Always know life gets better when you get better. We'll see you next time.